So I wanted to formally showcase the FX Dreamline Classic. This marks the beginning of my journey into PCP air rifles. So I've been competing in service rifle for about 7 years now, since I was 16. It's a discipline with military roots, fired at 200, 300, and 600 yards from the standing, sitting, and prone positions. You wear a shooting coat, you use a sling for everything except offhand. I love it to death. One thing that gets really time consuming is reloading for it, as well as just being able to find a range that allows you to practice. I'm lucky that in Ohio there's quite a few, but not everybody has that luxury. I also compete in an old discipline called Palma. Palma is fired at 800, 900, and 1,000 yards. It's limited to 223 or 308, all bolt action, all prone, all iron sights. It's very, very difficult. I am by far not the best at it, but I really enjoy it as well. And I also compete in small bore silhouette. That's more of a fun discipline for me. So basically you shoot silhouette targets, small steel targets at 40, 60, 77, and 100 yards in the shapes of chickens, pigs, turkeys, and rams. That's all fired from offhand, no shooting coats. It's a lot less demanding equipment-wise than some of the other disciplines that I shoot. So heading into air rifles is something completely different from me. I've been familiar with Olympic-style air rifle and things that people do in college in training for the Olympics, but I've never been exposed to really anything like this. The only thing I had shot before was a BB gun, some CO2 powered like a pepper ball pistol from Umarex. This is a first for me. So this is an FX Dreamline Classic, which reminds me a lot of my silhouette gun. The biggest difference, besides the fact that this is a PCP air gun and my silhouette rifle is a 22 LR, is the fact that this has really, really high scope rings. And the reason for this is so that the magazine can clear, otherwise it starts hitting against the scope. It makes it really hard to get a consistent cheek weld, however. I'm going to explore options for putting some kind of a riser on this stock. Not any kind of adjustable cheek piece, but like a piece of fabric or foam or something, which is things that I would do with guns when I first started shooting when I was around 13 or 14. So this scope is a Element Optics Helix 6x24. It's a second focal plane. It's got a pretty nice reticle. I'll go into that in another video. And these rings are a little bit different too. They are FX No Limit scope rings, which allow you to loosen a side of it, and you can move it for elevation and bring it up higher, which is pretty critical on this setup. It came with this fill probe, which goes onto a hose attached to a compressor. That process was really, really fun to figure out. It took 3 of us who are really, really experienced with firearms, powder burners more essentially, as I'm learning people in the airgun world call the rest of us, 40 minutes to figure out how to almost fill this gun. So what we did horrifically wrong is we first took a look at this and said, oh, geez, there's nowhere to fill it. There's nothing there. So we popped this cap off, hooked up the fill probe to a hose, and stuck it in. And quickly realized that as soon as we did this, the O-rings would pop out and fly out across the room. And we only had a couple of extra O-rings. Thank goodness we had any extra at all. So how we decided we were going to resolve this is one of us would work the compressor, another one of us would hold the gun, and the third one of us would push against with our thumb the end of this tube to try to keep the O-ring from falling out. Eventually we got enough air to be able to shoot it. Full disclosure, this is not my first time shooting the gun. I couldn't wait. I'm sorry, impatient. Anyways, came back in to pack things up and realized that we had taken this cap off. I pick up the cap and realized there is a nice hole on the end that had gotten spun around, and if you spin it the right way, will line up perfectly with the hole. Completely prevents this fill probe from going out the other side. Lesson learned. It took about 2 minutes after that. There's also, I believe as I mentioned before, a quick disconnect fitting that you can buy separately. So I'm really excited to kind of see how all this goes. As an overview of the gun so far, and this is more going to be for plinking, learning, kind of figuring out what all the different dials are, how to not screw things up, because the fundamentals of marksmanship are essentially the same.